All right, welcome everyone to another meetup by GoDaddy Pro, presented by GoDaddy Pro. Today we have Chris Edwards joining us. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. And yourself?
Very good, thanks. Chris Edwards is from Data Driven Labs and is going to talk to us about readying your sites for holiday traffic with Google Analytics. I do want to note here, this is part 5, the final part of our holiday readiness series. So if you did miss the other 4, they are all up. The replays are all up for you to watch. I will drop a link in the chat here shortly where you can get to those and see those, but they're in our GoDaddy events area as well. And this is also being recorded and will be available within the next day or two as well. So the whole series will be available shortly. Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm going to mostly get out of the way here. I will let people know this has been, like I said, is being recorded. We also do have a Q&A over in the chat area. So if you have any questions for Chris along the way, please do make sure that you ask the questions there, and we'll come back together at the end and answer some of those questions for you. So Chris, if you want to go ahead and share your screen with us, and I will get out of the way and let you do your thing.
All right. You should be able to see my slides. Do you see those up there?
Do not at the moment. Looks like it's a black screen so far. If you want to toggle that off and back. Oh, looks like Sandy in the chat says she sees sees the slides. So could just be me. Anybody else want to quickly go ahead and let us know in the chat if you see the slides or a black screen? That would be awesome, and then we can get started here.
All right. Looks like the slides can be seen. So we'll go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Perfect. I will hop out of the way and let you do your thing. Go ahead, Chris. Thank you.
All right. So today we're going to be jumping in and talking about e-commerce analytics. We're going to talk about what it is, why we want to use it, especially as you prepare for the holidays and you're going to be going into this shopping season. Knowing what's going on your website is extremely important. You want to know where your customers are coming from, what they're doing, and we're going to talk a lot more about more the e-commerce piece of Google Analytics. So, what makes it different than just your traditional goal tracking with inside of Google Analytics? As you know, you can track goals inside of Google Analytics, so you can have things that fire off, and it could be your goal of something happen. It'll show you the number of conversions, um, and you can put an estimated value. But with e-commerce analytics, what this is going to do is this allows you to actually dive in a lot deeper. You can see the exact transaction amounts, product performance, things along those lines by using the Google Analytics for e-commerce. So basically, there's a bunch of different KPIs that you're going to be able to see by using this feature over using just traditional Google Analytics goals. So these are going to be things like revenue, average order value, the average purchase quantity of a product, product revenue, time to purchase, checkout funnel. You can see all of these different things, and there's a little few other things you can see as well, which we'll go over. All right. So the biggest thing I always like to say is remember one thing: the data is not always going to be correct. Um, I don't recommend this to be a replacement for your accounting software. Don't use this to do your taxes or anything along those lines. This is going to be the reason for this is because like things like cancel orders, refunds, test orders, those can also go in there. You also could have data sampling that kicks in. That can also, if you're over 250,000 sessions, it'll do some data sampling, and so it won't always be 100% correct. Also, there could be people there opted out shoppers that are blocking analytics. There are certain browsers out there that will actually, by default, block analytics. There are plugins and extensions you can get to block Google Analytics from being tracked. So that kind of data will not come over inside of Google Analytics, which means that the data is not always going to be 100% correct. So just keep that in mind when you are working with any kind of analytics, especially with the e-commerce analytics side. All right, so we're going to talk about Google Analytics and enhanced e-commerce. So we have two different types inside of Google Analytics. You have two different types of e-commerce analytics. You have enhanced and you have standard. So the standard reports are going to go over basic things. You're going to get e-commerce overview, product performance, sales performance, transactions, time to purchase. What you get by turning on the enhanced, and I'll show you how we do that with different pieces in just a minute. But with enhanced e-commerce, what you're going to get is you're going to get shopping behavior analysis, checkout behavior, product list performance, internal promotion, order coupons, product coupons, and affiliate codes. There is no additional cost. There is a different code set you have to turn on when you turn this on. So both of these items are free inside of Google Analytics. It's just the standard one is your basic, and then your enhanced one you're going to have to turn on within both your analytics settings and within your plugin settings on if you're using WooCommerce or if you're using a different shopping cart system. Any of those, you'll have to turn on enhanced e-commerce. Okay, so how do we set up Google Analytics e-commerce tracking? So things, if you're using, for example, WooCommerce, there's an extension called Google Analytics Pro. If you add that extension in, you can actually just enable e-commerce tracking inside there. If you're using something like Easy Digital Downloads or something along those lines, there are third-party extensions that are through systems like Monster Insights or EDD Enhanced E-commerce Tracking, and that's by Shop Plugins. And then if you're using a whole different system, you can usually turn this on within your system. So, for example, Shopify has just a little toggle switch that you can just toggle this on, and you can use this inside of there. So just check with which platform you're using. Many of these will have a easy way to turn on e-commerce tracking. It's usually just a checkbox or something along those lines to turn on. If your system does not have that, look to see if there's an extension or a plugin that you can add to make it happen. Okay, so once you do it inside of there, you do need to enable it inside of Google Analytics. And so with this, you're going to go into your settings, and under e-commerce setup, you're just going to go ahead and enable that. You'll notice down there, step 2, you can enable enhanced e-commerce, which we'll talk about right now, actually. So when you go into step 2, you can enable enhanced. I like to enable enhanced on most of our properties. You can also set up checkout labeling. That's an optional step. That's going to allow you to create a checkout funnel, which we'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. But when you do set up your checkout labeling, you're going to have to look at the instructions that come with the system that you are using. So, for example, if you're using that Google Analytics Pro, it'll walk you through how to set up checkout labeling if you want to set those funnels. Now, this sometimes um, you may not set this up if this is typically if you have a multi-step checkout on your site. You can set up these. A lot of most people now opt in to use just the one page checkout on WooCommerce, which then you don't need to do this step because you don't have multiple funnels. But this is if you wanted to track, you know, your your first page, then check track your shipping page, your payment page. If you have different pages for each step, you can set up these funnel steps if you want. So then you got to go back in, and then you got to let your plugins know that you're enhanced. So just like we talked about turning on e-commerce tracking, you then need to go into the plugins, and there will be a button to click to say that you're using enhanced e-commerce. So you want to go ahead and turn those on. Each system has their own way to do that. So just look at the documentation that's with those, and you'll be able to find those inside of there based off which plugin you're using or any of those. So once you're inside of Google Analytics, when you turn this on, you're going to have under conversions a new section called e-commerce. And inside of there, you're going to see all of these new pieces that are going to pop in that you're going to be able to see your KPIs that you've set up. So let's talk about the different KPIs. The first one, revenue. This is going to be found under e-commerce and overview. And you'll see there, I have it circled. You can actually see your exact revenue that you're making on the site. So the cool thing about revenue is this one actually will populate across your entire Google Analytics instance. So when you're pulling up any of the other standard reports inside of Google Analytics, you'll be able to go in and add over under conversions to be able to see revenue and e-commerce conversion rate and transactions. And so you'll see here, I point that out with this little arrow, but you can actually come down and see, for example, in this acquisition, so we can see from the referral source that $95,000 was generated from organic search, $60,000 direct, 28,000 and so forth and so forth. So we're able to actually pull in the revenue and see that across all of the different reports inside of Google Analytics, which makes it a lot easier to see how different channels are performing, as well as seeing how certain pages and different, you can go into looking at your geolocation. You can see where you're making, which areas, the geographic areas that you're making the most revenue from. It really does help with being able to really nail in, drive into those and find out what's going on. Um, Also, it's great if you're using UTMs. You can actually track your campaign, how well your campaigns are performing, and what those campaigns have generated for you. All right, average order value. We're going to talk a little bit more about how I like to use some of these different KPIs, but this is going to be found also under that overview tab. You can see your average order value, also product performance. So this is great for going in and being able to see how each individual product is doing. So this is where we really get into the power behind using e-commerce analytics. We can dive in a lot deeper than we can just by doing goal conversions. So being able to jump in here now, we're actually going to be able to see how well our products are performing individually, and really see what's going on. You can actually see the number of unique purchases, the quantity purchase. You can see the average quantity of that people buy of certain things. So that's always fun to see. Is this something that people buy multiple of, or they just buy one? And you can also look at some of the shopping behavior as well on these. If you are tracking refunds, you're actually able to even see the product refunds, and how much that was. Okay, so time to purchase. This is kind of a fun one to see. It's also known as time lag. Able to see how long it takes for people to make a purchase of a particular product. So we can see that majority on this site, for example, most of those conversions, $100,000 worth of those, happened in that same day. But then we can kind of go down the list and see how many people came to the site and then made a purchase at a later date. So this is also great information for when you're trying to do your marketing to understand how long does it take for your typical user to make a purchase on your products. All right, so shopping behavior. This is where we get to see a funnel. We're going to talk about how we use this funnel in just a minute, but we can actually watch and see the shopping funnel. So we can talk about there's no shopping activities. This them just visiting your website, not visiting any of your shopping pages. And then we have the next one, which is where they have viewed a product. So when they go to view a product, um, that'll be the next step. And then we have when they add something to cart, and then we see checkout, and then sessions with transactions. And of course, across the bottom there, you'll see what it does is it categorizes it out that 81% of these visitors had no shopping activity. There was no cart addition, meaning they went and looked at a product page, but they didn't add anything to their cart. 62% drop off there happened on there. Cart abandonment, and then so forth, checkout abandonment. So this is where we can really see that whole shopping funnel and understand what's really going on. Okay, so shopping behavior. This is kind of what I was just explaining here, but no shopping activity means that we have not started shopping activity on that website. No cart addition. You viewed that product, but you didn't add it to your cart. Cart abandonment means you added the product to your cart, but you did not start the checkout process. And then you have checkout abandonment. That means you actually started the checkout process, but you did not complete the purchase. So these are always interesting to know, and being able to we're going to dive into how we troubleshoot when we see high numbers in certain areas here to really understand what's going on, how we use this data to enhance our sales performance of our site. All right, so checkout behavior. If you do set up a checkout funnel, this is similar to what that would look like. So this is great if you have, for example, this example, they have billing, shipping, payment, review, and then they have the confirmation page. So depending what your checkout funnel is, if you have a one-page checkout, you won't be using this because your checkout will literally be all of these and then success. So it wouldn't be used for those. But if you do have a long checkout process, this is really great for going in and reviewing those, and you can set that checkout funnel when you do set up your settings. All right, so Let's talk about what happens when we see a steep drop off inside these funnels. This is how we now can take this data and we can really utilize this data to improve the sales on our site. So the first thing, you're going to look at your shopping, and um, so here we're looking at our shopping and checkout behavior, and going to analyze each step as we go down to see what they're dropping off, and we're going to see where we need to focus some more efforts. And so when we're looking for this, we're going to ask some questions, right? We're going to look and say, why did they drop off? And we're going to identify some common problems. We're going to do a bug check, do some on-page surveys, heat maps, visitor recordings, A/B testing, different things like that. So if you see here, we have a large amount of people who did not add something to their cart. We also have large a large drop off from cart abandonment, which is what I would actually want to focus on in this case, because that's a large amount of people that have dropped off from there. I think that's 63% there. So we have a 63% drop off. So that means someone added something to their cart and then dropped off from there and did not finish checking out. So that would be something we'd want to take a look at. And so what we're going to do is go through and we're going to first look at some common causes. So first example, if there's no cart addition, first off, we want to do is we want to make sure that we've made it easy for them to add items to their cart. Make sure that add to cart button works and that is very easy for the people to find. So that could be your first thing. If you're not having a lot of cart additions and you have a large drop off from there, it may be something along the lines they can't find a way to add an item to their cart. The other thing is you may need to work on just the sales pitch in general. It may not be a strong enough pitch that's giving them the want to purchase that product. If you have a lot of shopping cart abandonment, one thing to look at is, did they find a better price? So maybe they added a product to their cart, but then they went and did a little bit more research and they found a better price. So with a shopping cart abandonment, you do want to look at, try to understand why they're dropping off, see what they're doing, see if you have your items priced correctly. Checkout abandonment. This is oftentimes a problem with the UX. Did they get lost? Or even did you present them with an unexpected cost? This could be something like high shipping or high shipping and handling charges. Sometimes those will, once they've added a cart and they get to that part where it shows the shipping, if that's where they're dropping off, it may be that your shipping price was a little too steep and did scare them off in that process. Another thing is, was there an error in filling out the form? There was something breaking along those lines. You can go and take a look at that. And so another thing is to check for bugs. So first, do a full QC of the steps where people are dropping off. Make sure you browser test. It may not be in the browser you're using. Maybe a different browser you're having. It's not working. But if you see a large drop off in an area that you can't explain with anything else, just do a quick check for bugs to make sure everything is working correctly. If things aren't working correctly, you're gonna have a large drop off because people aren't going to be able to complete their purchase. Another way you can do is at a funnel drop off point, you can do some on-page surveys. So there's many different systems out there. This one that I have pictured over here is a system called Hotjar. And there's a bunch of these different on-page surveys that you can add in. But if you add one of these in, you can just ask simple questions like, how can we help? Or are you looking for something we don't have? Do you need assistance? Even how can we improve? By asking these questions, you'll find a lot of people are going to provide you with this qualitative data. They're going to come in. They're going to explain to you. They're going to explain to you why they're frustrated and what they couldn't do. And this is going to help you to better understand why people are dropping off at that spot, and be able to then dive a little more in depth to fully understand what you need to do to improve that or the sale of that product. And this could just be that you didn't have the colors that they were looking for, or the options that they wanted for that product, and so you can use these to understand that a little bit better. Heat maps. This is also a great way to look at drop off points. You can install some heat maps on your site. This is going to show where people are kind of moving their mouse around. This is becoming less useful when you're looking at if you have a high amount of mobile traffic coming to your website, mainly because this tracks the movement of the mouse. Many people still read with their mouse when they're on the screen, and they hover their mouse over what they're looking at on the screen. And so it kind of uses that kind of data to understand a heat map of where people are going on your site, what they're looking at, what they're reading. Now, this does not always work when you're working with a mobile site because with your finger, you're not running your finger across the screen because it'll cause it to scroll and do all the other crazy things. So, if you have a large amount of your traffic that's coming in by mobile, heat maps may not be your best way to analyze a drop off point. All right, so visitor recordings. So this is another way. There are systems out there. Hotjar, for example, does this, um, and you can actually kind of see the mouse movements. It records, uses JavaScript to kind of record their mouse movements of where they're moving the mouse. You can use this to identify long pauses or identify people who are lost. We found this with one of our sites. We installed this on there when we had a large amount of people that were dropping off at a point, and we followed their mouse movements and kind of watched where you would actually see at a certain point when they were trying to find the checkout button, they were completely getting lost. They could not find anything. They were kind of just scrolling all over the place, moving their mouse, and you can just tell they could not find that final checkout button. And you did find some that ended up scrolling. It was just slightly below the fold of the page, so they couldn't see it. By moving that, we were able to increase sales on that page just by moving that button a little higher on the page so that people were able to find it. But you can use this to really identify what they're doing when they get on your site, what their actions are, what they're looking for, and be able to better understand where people are getting lost and what they're doing. You can also use this to look for bugs. We found using this with the recording, we actually were able to identify a bug that our development team could not find on their own when they were going through the site. Because the recording was able to bring up that bug and we're able to see the exact steps people took to get to that bug. And then, of course, the other way that you can do is you can do an A/B test. So with an A/B test, we'll be able to go in and use these different tools. There's Optimizely, VWO, also Google Optimize, which is free to use. Would be one of my would be a suggestion for if you have a smaller site. Optimizely and VWO are paid services, really great services, but they do come at a cost. But you can go ahead and you can these test tools will integrate with things like Google Analytics, Mixpanel, all of these different analytic platforms, so you can better understand what's going on. Try moving the button or changing the colors or testing these different options. A/B testing can get a little in the way when you are working with a smaller traffic site. So if your site does not have a large amount of traffic, A/B testing can get a little difficult to do. So I would say rely on some of the other data methods we talked about, but A/B testing works great when you're working with a larger site and you have a lot of traffic. All right, so what else can we use this data for? So we talked about being able to go in and really notice, look at this data and understand what's going on our website. But the other thing we can do is we can use this website to develop some new products. So when we start diving in, you can look here and go, okay, well, which product outperforms all the others? Are there certain variants that are selling better than others? And you can use these different insights to basically understand what you want to build more of and what you want to add in there. So we can see in this particular case, we can see all the different purchases that are happening. We can also see if there's items. Another great way is if you see that a certain item has an average quantity of a higher number, maybe you can look at, well, maybe we package this. Everyone always buys 12 of this one item. Let's go ahead and create a pack of a dozen of these as a package that they can get. So you can kind of look at some of those and come up with some new ideas of ways to build out new products based off of the data that you have coming in. The other thing is we can understand our marketing spend. So we talked earlier about being able to really dive in and see based off campaign with UTMs. We can also look at search query and bring in that information and see what people are searching for. With this, we can really dive in and understand exactly what people are looking for when they are coming to our site. So the big thing I like to recommend using is UTM's, and using those when you're sending out campaigns and using those to track your campaign performance. With those, you're going to be able to easily dive in and track down that spend directly to an individual to an individual campaign and understand the success of that campaign with your revenue goals. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, we were talking about doing the screen recordings and things along those lines. Is it also will help you understand where we found one of the errors that everyone was getting on a site was our terms of service checkbox was actually in an odd place. We had the checkout button, then we had an image for, I don't remember what the image was for. There was an image that was placed under that button, and then way at the bottom of the page there was a I agree to the terms of service. And what we found was we couldn't understand. We were had a huge drop off of people trying to purchase the product, and actually what drove us in there was we had someone send us a message saying, "Hey, I want to buy a product from y'all, and I can't buy the product." And so we went and we pulled up the screen recordings, and we went and dove a little more in depth and turned them on the checkout pages, and we saw that when they went to go finish their checkout, nobody was seeing, because it was just off the page. They weren't seeing that I agree box for the terms of service. And so what we did is we realized nobody was able to find that. We went ahead and we got with the development team. We moved that right above the button and in a place that was a lot easier to find it. And we almost doubled the conversions on that website, and turned the revenue of that website by just finding that one little issue. What's ironic was that had been set up that way for almost 2 years that their shop was running that. And so we look at how much potential lost revenue they had over those 2 years because people could not find that simple I agree box. So sometimes running these little tests and using this analytics and using data to better understand exactly what's going on inside your website can really generate a lot more revenue for you as you move forward. So I really encourage you to go in and set up those and understand as we go into the holiday season what exactly is going on your site, what's happening, so you can optimize that website and you can get that site ready for everything going forward. And that when this holiday season comes in, your site is optimized to its best performance so that you can capture as much of those sales as possible. All right, so left some time for questions. I know we usually have a lot of questions on this side, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up here for Marcus. If you've got any questions that you've seen come in, um, I'll go ahead and open up that floor.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Um, yeah, that was amazing. Lots of great stuff there. Last I told you right before we started here, the last time you talked to us about this, I wrote lots of notes. This time I cheated and took lots of screenshots. But
All right, Marcus, did I lose you? All right, so I think I lost Marcus here. While he gets back reconnected, I'll go ahead and jump back in. Um, So I see a couple questions that came in here. So the first thing was, do I need anything additional to track WooCommerce Analytics? So you will need a plugin from WooCommerce. There's a plugin called WooCommerce. I think it's Google Analytics Pro for WooCommerce. So you'll want to go ahead and grab that plugin, and when you get that plugin, you'll be able to turn on analytics tracking and use that. There are some other ones out there that you can use. I believe Monster Insights now works with WooCommerce as well. So if you already are using Monster Insights, or I think it's Exact Metrics, those plugins do have a piece that does work directly with WooCommerce. All right. So I think Marcus is trying to jump back in here. So I'll just keep going until he gets back over here. I have another question here. So, are there privacy concerns to be aware of when tracking site visitor behavior? So, when you're tracking site visitor behavior, the one thing that you need to make sure your site is compliant with the different privacy laws that exist out there. So, there's a big one out there, GDPR. There's also the California Online or Protection Privacy Act or something like that. It's very similar to GDPR. With those, most of those are built around, and I have a different talk I've given on GDPR and Google Analytics. on making sure that you anonymize things like IP addresses, that you don't track any personally identifiable information, PII. So that means inside your when you're going through and you're trying to do a um, when you're setting up your analytics and you have, for example, a query string or anything like that, not putting anything that's personally identifiable into that. You want to make sure that all that data is kind of cleansed out and not inside of there when you're pushing through. And so that way you're not tracking any of that into analytics. You should not be able to really go back and identify. So don't track things like order numbers or anything like that, because you should not be able to easily go, this is called pseudonymous data. You don't want to be able to go to take an order number and attach it back to a customer. So with Google Analytics, you just need to make sure that everything you're tracking in there is more anonymized. I think Marcus is back.
Hello, hello. Can you hear
There
me
you are.
again? I made it back. Awesome. Yeah, those were the two that I had in there at the moment. Doesn't look like we have any other questions right now, unless folks have another question they want to toss in while we're sort of wrapping up here. Yeah, like I said, tons of great info in this one. Lots of screenshots from me for things that I want to revisit later and take a look at and stuff. But I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about analytics. I guess one question that I have is sort of, if you were to kind of wrap up a lot of what you were talking about here in terms of holiday readiness, what is maybe like the one or two most important things that people should be looking out for in terms of their analytics as they sort of go into what I guess in the US here would be the big five weekend, right? Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that whole weekend and all the sales and stuff. As we get into that time, right? It's only a few weeks away now. What kind of things should people be looking at within their analytics and making some decisions on now?
Yeah, so typically what we do in this phase when we're about this far out from the big sales coming in, we typically go in and make sure that we are fully checking or watching the checkout funnel or the shopping funnel, and that's so that we can understand and really optimize what's going on. So we're talking about those big drop offs. Understanding where those drop offs are is going to be your key, because you want your site to be at its most optimized form by time you hit Black Friday. Because when you hit Black Friday and that sales season kicks off, everyone now is in that spending mood. They're jumping from site to site trying to grab that deal. And if they can't get through your site for whatever reason, whether it be a bug or something like that, they're just going to move on and find another one, because everyone gets into that almost that craze of just, they're ready to just, I know a lot of my family members, they're after the weekend of Black Friday, that holiday weekend, they're already bought maybe 75% of the gifts they're buying that year just in that one weekend. And
Hmm.
so you don't want to miss that because you had a small problem with your shopping funnel. You don't want to miss it because there was an error on this page and you lost out half your sales. So I recommend right now getting those set up and understanding where those drop offs are. If your drop off is people aren't adding items to the cart, go ahead and get an A/B test running in there right away and start testing the placement of that button, or how that button is seen, or making sure that you're getting in there. Maybe even send out a survey to your current clients to get some of that qualitative data. Look at some people who've purchased an item. Maybe send a survey asking, was our checkout process easy to use, or something along those lines, and then ask them to give you some feedback on it. Really try to dive in and understand what is going on with your site prior to these. You don't want your big test and your big sales to come, or your big test to come at your time of your big sale. That's where you're going to, you need to already have all of that tested and implemented by time you launch that holiday campaign. For most retail businesses, the holiday months are where they make most of their that's where the name Black Friday comes from. It's where most companies come out of the red and go into the black. And so when it comes to their revenue and sales, and so we want to make sure that we're prepared and ready for that.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that weekend, Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all of that, usually ends up being kind of an extrapolation of the rest of the year in percentages. So if you have 70% of people abandoning their carts the rest of the year, you're probably going to have 70% drop off during Black Friday or somewhere similar. So if you can shrink those and figure out where people are dropping off and fix those things now, those are going to be the same hiccups and issues that people potentially are seeing during that time. So you don't want to miss out on things there.
Definitely, definitely.
We do have one more question that Jeffrey added. How else can I find out why customers aren't buying my products? I don't know if this is analytics specific, but do you have any advice, Chris, on other things that maybe Jeffrey can look at to figure out why the products aren't selling?
Yeah. So you have two different types when you're looking at analytics and you're looking at sales and marketing. You have qualitative and quantitative data. So your quantitative data is going to be things like analytics. You can see where the drop offs are happening. You can see those different things. So going through and testing out those different pieces that we are talking about of the funnel and trying to identify where things are happening. But if you're not getting enough data from there, definitely focus on things. And again, you can put like heat maps or anything like that in there, try to understand what's going on that side. But the other way you can do it is you can do qualitative data. And so that's where we talk about those surveys, those on page surveys. Those on page surveys, um, most people think that people ignore them. But one thing I have found is if someone's frustrated, they want to tell you that they're frustrated. And so what they're going to do is they're going to come in. If that box pops up and they're frustrated because you don't carry the size that they're looking for, or you don't carry the variation they're looking for, or they don't like, even if they don't like your price, they think you're too expensive, they're going to tell you. They're looking for that. They're looking for that moment to stand there and be able to voice their concern and tell you. So having that chat right there, or a survey, or even a chat, great example right there is you can put one of those um, live chat type of buttons on your site, and that will also help as well. That they'll be able to come in and just tell you what's going on. Um, I recommend really looking at using one of those if the product's not selling to understand and try to understand why people may not be buying, and understand what they're looking for on that side. The other thing is you can do even some market analysis. You can use places like user testing. .com where you do have to pay for testing on there, but you can actually pay to have some tests, user tests go on and have people give full feedback about your product and what's going on and what they think about it. Even some focus groups, things like that. There's a lot of those different things to really understand why someone may not be interested in the product that you're selling. So it really comes down to what product you're trying to sell and understanding why it's not. If you have enough traffic, you can run some experiments as well. It just really comes down to how much traffic. And when I say that, I usually look at to get a good test in, you're going to need about 5,000 visitors per variation. So if you're running a 3 variant test, you're going to need about 15,000 visitors. If you're running a 2 variant test, you'll need about 10,000 to be able to hit statistical significance with that test.
Cool. Yeah. Hopefully that was helpful, Jeffrey. I appreciate what you said there about the experimentation and stuff, but the other thing that kind of struck me was just ask, right? I mean, if your products aren't selling, sometimes the best thing to do is just ask. And that little, like you said, chat window or survey or whatever is a great way to do just that. Just find out. Just ask people what it is that's keeping them from buying the product. That is all of the questions that we had in the Q&A section here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up for now. Um, Drop a link in here. I added a couple of links for everyone for going back and checking out the rest of the holiday readiness camp series that we've been doing this month. This is part 5, so there are 4 other parts, and they've all been recorded and they're available for replay now. This one will be also available within the next day or two. We'll get this uploaded. Kind of a hot tip if you want to watch the replay now. It is on the GoDaddy Pro Twitter channel. We did live stream this, so that's there. As soon as we're done here, you'll be able to go ahead and watch it there immediately. So feel free to go do that. The other link that I dropped in the chat here is for another series that we're doing tomorrow. Feel free to come join us. And Alex Standiford is talking about building your own blocks within WordPress. It's part 3 of that series. The other 2 are also available for viewing now on events.godaddy.com. So make sure that you catch up on those if you haven't watched those, and register for tomorrow's event there as well. And then we'll be back next week with more of these meetups as well at 3:00 on Wednesdays. That's 3 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks again, Chris. Where you want to tell people where they can find you if they have some questions afterwards as well?
Yeah, just hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Chris Edwards CE. So at Chris Edwards CE, and just hit me up there, and I will try to get back to you as quickly as possible.
Awesome. Appreciate you for joining and sharing all your in-depth knowledge of Google Analytics and helping people get ready for this crazy holiday season that's coming up. So appreciate that, and appreciate everyone for coming and joining us today. And we will see you next time.
All right.